Welcome once again to another edition of the Brattlecast, one of our favorite places to be. I'm Jordan Rich, along with the proprietor of the Brattle Bookshop in Boston, Ken Gloss, and we talk about not just books, but just about anything on paper, one way or another. And Ken, today we're going to focus on something called real photo postcards.
Well, yes, and it's interesting because I love postcards. I just find them fascinating. I find, for whatever reason there is, that I like them. Actually, my father, when he used to go to estates and so on, he would many times get a whole truckload of books, really good books. There'd be a box of postcards. He'd grab those in the house, want to sort through them first. And I don't know, somehow that's carried over to me. But what I find fascinating about a lot of types of collecting is you say the word postcard and everybody gets the image of what they want.
Mm-hmm.
But it really comes down to that you could say postcards and you could go off in 100 different tangents, directions, paths. And one that's become particularly popular in the last few years is what they call real photo postcards. Now, I'm going to hold one up to the screen so that everybody listening can see it. But what the idea of these postcards were is that, you go to tourist sites and you can buy a postcard here, you can buy them there. But there was also an option back at the beginning of the 20th century that if you took photographs, they had it all set up almost in kits that you could take photographs, send them off, and maybe it would be family members. A lot of the ones we just bought in a large collection were different type of colonial houses or farmhouses, architecture. But you could take your own postcards and then they'd have them all set up in the back so you could send them off. And one of the reasons I think these have become very collectible is if you have a postcard of Boston, of Hawaii, of New York City, of the Statue of Liberty, and you could Grand Canyon, you can name millions of places, Europe, whatever. They usually, when you do a postcard, there are thousands of almost the same card. I mean, they still are fun. They're still fun to look at. But with these real photo postcards, people might have done 100 of them, 50 of them. And every one of them is sort of unique and different. And so it's sort of showing what the common person wanted to have in a postcard. And the collectors find them fascinating.
Interesting, Ken, that today with QR codes, you can create a video image that's, specific to your family or whatever instantaneously. It sounds like they were doing something very similar, different technology way back then.
Well, I would say instantaneous wasn't quite that, but the same idea and the same idea of what they're doing. Although instantaneous then might have been a few weeks or more. But, that's it's funny. I would imagine you sent off something then. You took a picture, you go, I want to make a postcard out of it. The fact that it would take a few weeks or maybe even a month to get it back seemed, wow, that's really going quickly.
That's fast.
Do the same type of thing now, and if it takes more than a minute, you're going, wow, this is really slow. And it's a different way of looking at the world and technology and information. But where these postcards get really interesting or valuable or really collectible is they did many things that nobody would have ever thought of. Now, the ones I have, like I say, the person had been very interested in old architecture. And so anytime they could get a postcard showing an old farm, a suburban house, a church, whatever, these are all directed towards architecture. And they'll probably sell at about $5 a piece. But when you go through it, sometimes you might find one from the early 1900s of a college team playing basketball, or maybe one playing baseball. What really picks up there is not only the person who's the postcard collector, but the person interested in that sport. And there are way, way more people interested in baseball. And you'd even sometimes have a postcard of Babe Ruth or some of the big teams. Those can go for hundreds of dollars now. First of all, because you know that there is a limited number of them, they're not easy to get. They might be in poses that you'd never think of doing. Uh, Others that I've seen, yeah, where you have people with their babies all dressed up, maybe in the Easter parade, showing off, the beautiful clothes. Others will show off their new car. Maybe they just got a car and the family will be standing around it. And so the fascinating parts about these are, first of all, they're unique in a way. I mean, nobody made one. They probably made 50 or 100, but probably most of those have long gone. And the subject material keeps changing and changing. And so there are people who say, okay, I want to see all the real photo postcards when we get a collection in. But then you see them flipping through and they go, oh, there's one of an airplane. That World War One battle scene. Those literally can go in the 50, 100, $200 range if they're good, if they're good sharp photos. On the other hand, maybe it's an obscure family, they'll go for $5. Maybe the dress and the fashion in the postcard is something. I've seen them out in the West, in the mining areas, or showing the farm equipment, the farm machinery. And you get a much, much more interesting view of what this common person at the time. Now, common to the sense that they had to have enough to have a camera, they had to be able to mail these off. So, they had to have some degree of some money, and they had to have some degree of uh, being able to get this all done. But you see how they were looking at their surroundings, what they considered important to them, and maybe to the person or people like them, as opposed to the tourist bureau at the
Hmm.
time saying, this is what you're going to want, and that's what you're going to want.
Well, these are historic freeze frames, and as you point out, it might be the style of car or the style of clothing or the decor of a home from a certain period of history that really gets people excited.
Well, it gets people excited. And for instance, I saw a group of them that I actually found fascinating. There was a man who collected libraries, postcards of libraries,
Hmm.
and which are fine because architecture of a library, the old Carnegie libraries, it's somewhat similar. I mean, some are much more fancy than others. The Boston Public Library is a much fancier building than maybe the Bolton Library,
No
which is
offense
a
to Bolton.
small town, Bolton, Massachusetts. But
Right.
the idea of libraries are somewhat the same. But then I saw ones that showed people and obviously relatives or friends inside the library. One I saw showed the group of kids at the obviously the reading around, I think the one I saw was around 1920. So it even shows you that libraries were doing a lot of the same things at that time, but you see these kids dressed in the 20s, a librarian. You see how the background of the library, how the library was decorated. There's not that many people who are going to be fascinated by that, but the historian who might be looking into how were libraries used, in one sense, you get the big facade, the building showing the place off. In the other, you get how did this family view the library? How did this librarian view the inside? How is it being used? You might even have someone in the background. So, horse and buggies you'd see in some of these pictures. Sometimes you'd see them with a car starting to be in it. And you could see the world changing. Actually, to tell you the truth, one I would love to see that I haven't seen yet, and it's a subject that I find hard to collect. I like bowling. I would love to see some of these postcards or pictures of a bowling alley around the turn of the century, or maybe even better would be behind the scenes where you have the pin setters and so
Yes.
on. But I have seen cards like that showing manufacturing businesses sort of behind the scenes. For one reason or other, they took these pictures that nobody would have ever thought that people would care, and I care now more about those pictures than I do sort of the classic picture showing something off.
Well, as you say, Ken, if you can imagine it, it probably exists, and that's the whole point of real photo postcards, because you can. These were created by individuals or small groups, and just like today, a million of them out there. So it's a
There's a
vast
million of
treasure trove.
There's a million of them out there, but each one is a lot more unique and different. And so I have people who say, well, any real photo postcard that you have that shows a sporting scene, they tend to be a little more expensive. Those are what I want. I have some other people who want to see manufacturing scenes. Others want to see parades, especially small town parades. So even within real photo postcards, which are just a small section of postcard collectors, then you have people who even get more specific in particular types of kinds, which might be inclusive to other collections they have. And it just goes on and on. And then sometimes when you ask the people about what they collect, why they collect it, you get some really interesting answers and some some really fascinating people. And even better sometimes that I love is I've had a few times where 2 or 3 collectors heard we had a collection in, they'd come and look at it. And even just sort of almost being a fly on the wall as they're looking through, them explain, oh, look, I've got one of these, and someone else says, I've got one of those. And then they'd start talking among themselves about why this one excites them as opposed to that one. And I find those conversations just sort of being a fly in the wall, listening.
Yeah, it's feeding off the
more
passion, right? It's feeding off that passion. It's very exciting.
Exactly. And that's one of the great things about what I do in being in a used and rare bookstore is the people are sometimes as interesting or more interesting than what they're collecting. But yes, you do see that passion, and it might be something that you have absolutely no interest in, except the expression of their passion is so fascinating.
Well, that's one thing about you. You follow up and you add to your list of stories every single day. That list is growing. And of course, you can find out more at brattlebookshop.com and continue to listen to the podcast, which is everywhere in every country. And Ken, if I'm in a foreign country soon, and I will be, I'll send you a postcard.
I would love to get a postcard, and I hope that you find some unusual place that becomes a memory for a long time and you have a great time.